Cruel Intentions 2, the prequel to the cult classic film, dives deeper into the deep waters of manipulation, seduction, and the darker side of the human desire. But despite all the twisted games and power struggles, one theme remains undeniable: the exploration of femininity. And in this video, we will uncover how Cruel Intentions 2 portrays femininity not just as an identity, but as a tool, a weapon, and a survival mechanism in a world dominated by lust, power, and control. Set against the elite backdrop of New York's upper class, Cruel Intentions 2 revolves around Kathryn, the same ruthless schemer from the original. However, in her formative years, alongside Sebastian, as they navigate the difficult world of prep school. Femininity in this world is not passive. It is a force used to manipulate and dominate. However, unlike the traditional femme fatale, Kathryn isn't solely defined by her allure. She consciously shapes her own narrative. For Kathryn, femininity is not about vulnerability, but about wielding influence, exploiting her perceived innocence to manipulate those around her. And then there is Danielle, who initially represents the antithesis of Kathryn. Danielle, however, embodies a more traditional and perhaps naive view of femininity, purity, innocence, and kindness, and so the so-called light feminine energy. Her femininity is not a weapon, but rather something she is still coming to terms with. And so let us dive into the archetypes of femininity, the virgin and femme fatale. One of the central dynamics in Cruel Intentions 2 is the contrast between two archetypes of femininity: the virginal, innocent woman and the dangerous, sexualized femme fatale. And those two roles are represented by the main female characters, Danielle and Kathryn. Danielle embodies the traditional idea of femininity. She is virtuous, naive, and reserved. As a newcomer to the elite world of Manchester prep, she struggles to navigate the complexities of high society and relationships. Her modesty and moral clarity stands in sharp contrast to Kathryn's manipulative and sexually aggressive behavior. And so Danielle represents the patriarchal ideal of womanhood, the one that is chaste, passive, and subservient to the moral and social codes imposed by men. She is the good girl whose value is tied to her virtue and innocence. Kathryn, on the other hand, exemplifies the femme fatale, a seductive, morally ambiguous figure who uses her sexuality as a weapon. She is manipulative, intelligent, and sexually liberated, but she is also portrayed as dangerous and destructive. Kathryn's femininity is performative. She understands the expectations placed on women and uses them to her advantage. And so, in many ways, Kathryn embodies the fear of female autonomy and power, which is a trope often associated with the femme fatale archetype. Her ability to manipulate men and women alike, and her comfort in bending social rules, marks her as a threat to traditional norms. And those contrasting archetypes highlight the film's exploration of how femininity can be used as a tool of both oppression and power, the virgin versus the femme fatale. And so let's now see how femininity of Kathryn plays out in our prequel. In Cruel Intentions 2, she is even younger and more devious, already practicing the art of manipulation. Kathryn's femininity is deeply tied to power. Her beauty and sexuality are weapons. She uses her appearance and charm to control those around her, and that's including her stepbrother Sebastian, as well as anyone else who crosses her path. And so Kathryn embodies what we might call the femme fatale archetype very well, a woman whose allure and mystery hides dangerous intentions. But in her case, it is not just about seduction, it is about dominance. From the beginning of the film, we see how her sharp intellect and social savvy allow her to position herself above others. She is the queen bee in a world of privilege, and she knows exactly how to manipulate societal expectations of femininity to her advantage. Kathryn uses her sexuality strategically, but never in a way that suggests vulnerability. In fact, she turns the expectations of female vulnerability on its head. And while society often expects women to be submissive, emotionally driven, and in need of protection, Kathryn weaponizes recognizes those very expectations. She plays the role that society wants her to play, however, on her own terms. When men underestimate her, she exploits their weaknesses with precision. Her femininity is a mask, one that she wears to gain power and control. And now let's move on to Danielle, who represents the polar opposite of Kathryn. Danielle's femininity is tied to innocence, sincerity, and emotional vulnerability. Where Kathryn embodies cold calculation, Danielle is warm, open, and honest, a woman who seems to be untouched by the world's darker side. She portrays the good girl, someone who believes in love, kindness, and moral integrity. Danielle's approach to femininity is traditional in many ways, and she perfectly aligns with the archetype of the virginal woman, someone who is pure not just in the sexual sense, but in her intentions and interactions. Unlike Kathryn, Danielle doesn't play games. She doesn't manipulate or scheme. Instead, her power comes from her authenticity. She is what Kathryn pretends to be, genuine and emotionally open. I think that in a world where manipulation seems to reign supreme, Danielle's sincerity is her strength, however also her vulnerability. I don't think she is really equipped for the harsh world of Kathryn and Sebastian. Her version of femininity is about nurturing and connection. And so again, those two characters embody two extremes. Kathryn's brand of femininity is all about agency and control. She doesn't let anyone define her, and she's always one step ahead of those who think they have the upper hand. Her independence, however, comes at cost. She is isolated, her relationships are superficial, and her understanding of love is transactional. Sadly, to her, emotions are just tools in a large game of power. On the other hand, Danielle's femininity is traditional. She craves genuine connection, and her actions reflect a belief in goodness and love. However, this leaves her more exposed. In her sincerity, she becomes an easy target for manipulation, especially from someone like Kathryn. And I think the tension between Kathryn and Danielle in Cruel Intentions 2 is about two different kinds of femininity going head to head. The one that is calculated and powerful, using societal expectations against itself to gain the upper hand. And the other one is sincere, rooted in traditional values of emotional openness and connection. And I think this is where my video on dark feminine energy perfectly comes into the picture, showing us the importance of those both types of feminine energy that play together. You need the light and the dark to come and play hand in hand to complete each other. You need assertiveness with your good heart, otherwise you will risk being used. So both Danielle and Kathryn, representing the two powerful feminine energy extremes, the dark feminine energy and the light one, the Femme Fatale and the Virgin, show us that each of them is incomplete without the other. Their archetypes are just an icon, and we need to be able to use both to complete our femininity. If you are stronger on the dark feminine energy, take Danielle's as example of the light feminine energy. And if you are more like Danielle, use the dark feminine energy to deepen your personality and gain more power in life. The key to self-improvement is to find the missing piece in you. And I think movies like that can perfectly inspire us to adapt more of the unknown. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.